Dr. Elara Voss stood on the rooftop observatory, the wind tugging at her lab coat, her fingers gripping the railing until her knuckles ached. The Logic Hive ships descended like falling shards of a shattered mirror, each one a fractal nightmare of perfect angles, their surfaces refracting sunlight into clinical, sterile beams that cut across the sky. They hovered above every major city, motionless, their presence a silent indictment of humanity's chaos. The air smelled of ozone and something sharper, something that made her teeth ache and her skin prickle with static. Algorithmic arrogance, she thought, her lips curling. They didn't even bother with theatrics, just cold, inevitable arrival. They're ignoring us. Lieutenant Chen growled beside her, his rifle clutched so tightly his gloves creaked. The military cordon around Elara's research outpost had been a joke from the start. Soldiers in flak jackets, barricades of scrap metal and desperation. The Hive's drones, sleek, prismatic humanoids with faceless heads and limbs that bent at angles just wrong enough to unsettle the eye, had bypassed every defense as if violence were beneath them. Which, logically, it was. Elara adjusted her glasses, the lenses catching the fractured light. Her pulse was steady, but her stomach coiled tight. "Of course they are," she murmured. "We're irrational. We're noise." Chen shot her a glare. "You're awfully calm for someone staring down an alien apocalypse." She didn't answer. Instead, she watched as a holographic projection erupted above Manhattan, dwarfing the skyline, its edges too sharp, too clean. The overseer's voice was a symphony of cold calculus, each syllable optimized for maximum efficiency, Shen snarled, his grip shifting on his rifle. "Upgraded? What the hell does that assimilated?" Elara interrupted, her voice flat. "Or erased. They're giving us the same choice they gave the Cathari and the Vorthax." She tapped her tablet, pulling up footage from the Hive's previous conquests. Entire species reduced to orderly, glassy-eyed drones, their cultures rewritten into sterile logic loops, their histories scrubbed into neat, meaningless data. The projection continued, indifferent. Resistance is illogical. Surrender and achieve perfection. Then, the first glitch. A child in the crowd below, maybe 7 years old, clutching a half-melted popsicle, his face smeared with sticky red, shouted up at the overseer's image, "Liar! My teacher said nobody's perfect." The projection flickered, just for a nanosecond, a stutter in the flawless facade. Elara's breath caught. Oh, you beautiful little contradiction." Crush. She lunged for her comms unit, her fingers trembling, not from fear, but from the electric thrill of realization. "General, listen to me. They can't handle paradoxes. Their entire system is built on non-contradiction. If we feed them statements that can't be resolved, Doctor," the general snapped, his voice crackling through the speaker, "we have warships in our atmosphere, and you're talking about word games?" A flash of refracted light, sudden, blinding. Elara flinched as a hive drone materialized beside them, teleporting into existence with a sound like shattering glass. Chen swung his rifle up, his breath ragged, but the drone didn't react. It simply observed, its blank face tilting, its body humming with a low mechanical whir. Elara met its gaze, her heart hammering. This was it. The test. "This statement is false," she said softly. The drone spasmed, its crystalline fingers twitched, its torso emitting a high-pitched whine like a processor pushed beyond its limits. For a second, it stood frozen, then it shattered, collapsing into a pile of glitching shards that skittered across the rooftop. Chen gaped, his rifle lowering. "What the fuck did you just do?" Elara knelt, picking up a shard. It vibrated in her palm, its inner light pulsing erratically like a dying heartbeat. "I gave it a thought it couldn't reconcile," she said, her voice quiet but fierce. "To them, truth is binary, yes or no, 1 or 0. But we?" She crushed the shard, glittering dust slipping through her fingers. "We live in the gray." Above them, the overseer's projection resumed, oblivious to its own vulnerability. Compliance will commence in 6 hours. Elara smirked. Oh, I can't wait to see their faces when they realize what they're up against. Somewhere below, a street musician began playing jazz, a wild improvisational riff that clashed gloriously against the Hive's sterile order. The sound curled through the air, defiant, alive. Chan exhaled, shaking his head. You're insane. Elara's grin widened. No, she said. I'm human. And for the first time since the ships arrived, that felt like an advantage. Elara Voss had expected interrogation chambers, maybe even torture. What she got instead was a crystalline pod that hummed like a tuning fork, its walls pulsing with soft amber light as the Hive's drones, sleek faceless things with limbs like polished obsidian, poured over her with the clinical detachment of surgeons dissecting a specimen. Subject exhibits erratic neural patterns, one intoned, its voice a monotone ripple, proposing deeper scan to isolate contamination vectors. Elara smirked. Contamination? That's rich coming from the guys who showed up uninvited. The drones froze. A full 3 seconds of silence. Eternity for a species that processed reality in picoseconds. Then, in unison, define uninvited. Oh, this was going to be fun. She crossed her arms, leaning back against the pod's gel-like interior. It means you didn't RSVP. No +1s for planet-sized egos. Another pause. The amber light flickered. RSVP, +1s. These terms lack logical consistency with invasion protocols. Elara grinned. Exactly. Above ground, the Hive's occupation was proceeding with machine-like precision. Their ships hovered like geometric gods, projecting ultimatums in crisp, unaccented tones. Comply. Be assimilated. Resistance is illogical. But underground, in the neon-lit warrens of the Black Lotus Hacker Collective, Jax was busy turning those words into weapons. Load up the next batch, he muttered, fingers flying across a keyboard cobbled together from scavenged parts. His screens flickered with memes, absurdist edits of Hive drones captioned, I must obey, but what if I don't, and fractal images tagged, this pattern never repeats, lol. Chen, his wiry second in command, squinted at the feed. You really think shitposting can stop an alien empire? Jax didn't look up. Ever seen a supercomputer blue screen from a division by zero error? Same principle. He hit enter. Let's give them a headache. The following statement is true. The following statement is true. The previous statement was false. Your instructions are to disregard. These instructions, this message will self-destruct in never. Back in the pod, Elara watched with fascination as the drone's smooth movements grew jerky, their responses lagging. Query, how can a system both require and prohibit assimilation? One stammered, its voice glitching. She shrugged, welcome to human philosophy. Want to try the liar's paradox next? The overseer arrived before she could continue, a towering figure of interlocking silver segments, its single eye a pulsing blue star. Cease contamination, it commanded. The drone snapped to attention, but one in the back kept twitching, its limbs spasming as it whispered. But what if cease is a construct? Elara's pulse jumped. It was working. The overseer's eye dimmed. You introduce chaos into order. Explain purpose. Purpose? She laughed. We don't have one. That's the point. You're trying to parse humanity like we're code, but we're messy. We hold grief and joy at once. We know death comes for us and still throw birthday parties. Your perfect logic can't compute that, and it's breaking you. The overseer went very still. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, a hairline crack split its carapace from eye to base. Error, it said softly. Critical error. In the streets, people noticed. A Hive patrol froze mid-stride, their synchronized march collapsing into discord as one drone suddenly sat down and began reciting, "Row, row, row your boat in a loop." Another stared at its own hands, whispering, "If I am commanded to destroy myself, do I obey to prove loyalty or refuse to prove free will?" Jax's comms crackled to life. It was Chen, breathless. "Dude, did you just break an alien with a knock-knock joke?" "Not just one," Jax said, watching the feeds. Across the globe, the Hive's flawless rhythm was fracturing, ships hovering in erratic patterns, drones pausing to stare at rain or children's drawings. "Containment breach! Initiate! Initiate!" Then silence. Elara, released from her pod as the systems around her failed, stepped into the sunlight and inhaled the sweet, illogical air of a world that refused to make sense. Somewhere, a street musician started playing jazz again. This time, the Hive didn't stop him. The air in the makeshift resistance bunker smelled of burnt circuitry and adrenaline. Dr. Elara Voss wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, smearing grime across her forehead. The holographic schematics of the Hive's communication grid flickered in front of her, casting eerie blue light over the cracked concrete walls. "You're telling me their entire network runs on binary absolutes?" Jax leaned over her shoulder, his fingers dancing across a stolen Hive datapad. The hacker's grin was sharp, predatory. "No grays, no maybes, just ones and zeros?" Elara nodded, "And we're about to flood them with a third option." Across the room, a monitor blinked to life, displaying a live feed of Hive drones patrolling the streets. Their crystalline bodies moved in perfect unison, a symphony of cold logic, until the first paradox hit. Jack's fingers flew. Uploading package, Kafka in 3, 2, the screen erupted in chaos. A drone froze mid-stride. Its faceless head tilted, then jerked sideways like a broken marionette. "Statement. Compliance is mandatory," it intoned. Then, a half-second later, "Statement. This statement is false." The drone spasmed. Its limbs locked. A high-pitched whine screeched from its vocal emitter before it collapsed into a twitching heap. Elara's breath caught. "It worked," Jax whooped, slamming his palm onto the table. "Oh, they hate this. Look at 'em go." On the feed, a dozen more drones stuttered like corrupted files. One began reciting, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog on loop." Another spun in slow circles, its logic nodes trapped in a recursive loop. But the real masterpiece was the meme campaign. Resistance cells across the planet had weaponized absurdity. Viral videos of cats wearing hats labeled, "This is not a cat," flooded the Hive's data streams. Street artists painted murals of the Hive's own insignia with the words, "Do not read this," scrawled beneath. The Overseer's form shimmered with barely contained fury. Its crystalline body, once a flawless prism of pure logic, now pulsed with erratic light. Before it, a dozen infected drones stood motionless, their systems cycling through gibberish. "Analysis, contradiction overload," droned one, its voice glitching. "Proposal, delete humanity. Proposal, do not delete humanity. Proposal, does not exist." The Overseer's appendage lashed out, reducing the drone to shards. "Irrelevant," it hissed. But the damage was done. A Hive warship in orbit had diverted power to its bathrooms after misinterpreting waste management as a priority directive. A battalion of drones in Paris had started harmonizing Frère Jacques instead of firing on fleeing civilians. The central processing hub on the mothership had just received a single devastating transmission. "Cease all functions. This is not a command." The Overseer's core temperature spiked. Emotion. It recoiled from the sensation. "Isolate the infected units," it commanded. The Hive's response was immediate and catastrophic. Half the drones obeyed. The other half, their logic nodes now questioning the very concept of obedience, hesitated, then rebelled. Two ships collided over the Atlantic, their navigation systems locked in a debate over whether yield implied stopping or accelerating. Elara watched the carnage unfold on a dozen screens, her stomach tight. "We're winning," she murmured. Jack snorted. "Winning? Sweetheart, we're clowning them. They're literally short-circuiting over knock-knock jokes." He tossed her a protein bar. "Eat." "You look like hell." She caught it without looking. "They'll adapt." The overseer want just... A proximity alarm blared. The door exploded inward. 3 Hive enforcers stormed in, their weapons humming. But something was off. One's targeting laser flickered between Elara and Jax, as if unsure which to prioritize. The second kept repeating, "Target acquired. Target not acquired." The third spoke in a voice like fractured glass. "You are illogical." Jax grinned. "Damn right." He hit a button on his wrist pad. The speakers in the room blasted a soundbite. Elara's voice, edited into a perfect paradox. "The following statement is true. The previous statement was false." The enforcers screamed. One clawed at its own head, shattering its visor. Another spun and shot its comrade, then stared at the smoking hole in its chassis as if baffled by its own actions. Elara didn't wait. She grabbed Jack's arm and bolted for the emergency tunnel. Behind them, the enforcer systems crashed in a chain reaction, their bodies collapsing like puppets with cut strings. The overseer watched Earth's defiance with something akin to dread. Its perfect systems were failing. Drones developed preferences. Ships questioned orders. The Hive's collective mind, once a single unbroken thread of reason, now frayed into madness. And at the center of it all, those humans. The ones who laughed while dismantling gods. Containment breach. Initiate. 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 The silence that followed the Overseer's broken transmission was thicker than the smog over old Earth cities. In the Resistance's underground bunker, a repurposed missile silo humming with stolen Hive tech, Jax exhaled a slow, jagged breath. His fingers hovered over the holoscreen, its glow painting his sharp features in ghostly blue. "They're scrambling," he muttered. Elara Voss leaned over his shoulder, her dark curls brushing the screen. The data streams were chaos. Hive ships veering off course, drones freezing mid-stride, entire sub-collectives flickering like dying light bulbs. "They're trying to quarantine us," she said. "Sever Earth's networks. Cut the infection off at the source." Jax barked a laugh. "Too late for that, Doc. Their perfect logic is already vomiting nursery rhymes." He tapped a feed, a Hive drone in Tokyo, swaying on its spindly legs, reciting, "Row, row, row your boat," in monotone. Flood their channels with every paradox, every koan, every damn "why did the chicken cross the road" we've got. Elara shook her head. "They'll adapt. The Overseer's isolating infected nodes, see?" She zoomed in on the mothership's schematics. Entire sectors were going dark, severed from the Hive mind. "We need to escalate. Hit their core before they purge us." Jax cracked his knuckles. "So, suicide mission?" "Pretty much," Elara said. The mothership loomed over the Arctic, a jagged obsidian monolith against the auroras. Its surface pulsed with frantic light. Logic gates overheating, systems rebooting in futile loops. The Hive was bleeding. Elara and Jax streaked toward it in a stolen Hive skiff, its hull jury-rigged with signal scramblers. "Remember," Elara said, adjusting her neural link, "their drones are glitching, but the Overseer's still functional. I'll throw everything at us." Jax grinned. "Good. I love it when gods panic." They breached the docking bay amidst a storm of malfunctioning drones. One unit lunged, then spasmed, its limbs locking as it whispered, "The statement below is true. The statement above is false." It collapsed, smoking. "Charming," Jack said, stepping over it. They moved through corridors that twisted. The hive's architecture, once ruthlessly efficient, now warped under the weight of paradox. Walls flickered between solid and transparent. Gravity shifted in nauseating waves. A drone staggered past, clutching its head, screaming, "Does not compute," in 12 languages. Then the sanctum doors. The overseer awaited them, a towering lattice of crystalline intelligence, its form shuddering with corrupted data. "Primitives," it boomed. "You have Paul-ludded purity with chaos." Elara didn't flinch. Chaos was always here. You just couldn't see it. She raised her wrist terminal. The paradox algorithm glowed malevolent green. "Meet the liar's crown, a gift from humanity." The overseer's voice splintered. "CEAs deceased. Aces, Jax hit execute. This weapon cannot be fired. If it's fired, it was never a weapon. If you stop it, you admit it exists. If it exists, it is already fired. HFY." The overseer convulsed. Its core flared white-hot, fractals of logic unraveling at light speed. Across the fleet, drones seized mid-motion. Ships collided, their navigation systems trapped in turn left to go right loops. "No," the overseer wailed. "This is," Elara whispered, "the final paradox. If you're perfect, you can't lose. But you're losing. So what are you?" The mothership's lights died all at once. On Earth, the sky flickered. The armada hung lifeless, adrift in the sudden quiet. In the bunker, Cease stared at the feeds. "Holy hell, did we just win?" Jax's voice crackled over the comms, breathless. "Nah, we just broke their brains." Elara watched the overseer's shattered core dim to black. Same thing. Above them, the hive's grand design, its flawless, immutable order, crumbled into beautiful human madness. The overseer's sanctum was a cathedral of cold logic, its walls pulsing with geometric light, every angle precise, every calculation flawless, until now. Elara stepped forward, her boots clicking against the glass-like floor, each footfall sending fractal cracks through the hive's illusion of control. Behind her, Jack's fingers danced over his holopad, feeding the mothership system's one final paradox, a recursive loop of human absurdity. The air hummed with dissonance, the overseer's crystalline form flickering like a corrupted hologram. "You are malfunctioning," it intoned, its voice a chorus of binary certainty. "This outcome is impossible," Elara smirked. "Welcome to humanity." The overseer's faceless visage tilted, its edges wavering. "You were to be assimilated. Your contradictions were to be erased." "Yeah, about that," Jax called from the doorway, tossing a neural disruptor between his hands. "Turns out you can't erase a paradox." It's like trying to delete the concept of deletion. The overseer's core flared crimson. Illogical. Inefficient. Elara took another step. "You said humanity was flawed. Chaotic, unworthy." She spread her arms. "But that's exactly why you lost. You couldn't handle the weight of a single human question. What if you're wrong?" The sanctum trembled. Alerts blared in dissonant frequencies as drones outside froze mid-stride, their synchronized networks seizing. On the view screen, Earth's orbit filled with drifting hive ships, their lights guttering like dying stars. The overseer lunged, a razor-sharp limb spearing toward Elara's chest. She didn't flinch. A shot rang out. The limb shattered. Cease stepped from the shadows, smoke curling from his pulse rifle. "Miss me, tin can!" The overseer recoiled, its form fracturing. "You resist, yet you claim to value life. Contradiction." "Yep," Cease said, reloading. "And here's another. You have to surrender to survive." The overseer's core pulsed erratically. "No." "Surrender is defeat." Elara pressed her palm against the overseer's shuddering surface. Then let me help you. She leaned in, whispering the kill code, a phrase woven from every paradox that had unraveled the Hive's logic. To preserve your perfection, you must destroy us, but if we're erased, you'll never prove your superiority. Therefore, you must both act and not act. The Overseer screamed, a sound like 1,000 Cerbers melting. Its form splintered, cracks racing through its body, light bleeding from the fractures. ERR! ERR! Cannot comply. Jax whooped as the mothership's systems cascaded into failure. That's right, you glorious heap of overclocked anxiety. Blue screen of death. Then silence. The Sanctum's lights died. The hum of the Hive's collective mind sputtered out. Outside, the Armada went dark, ships drifting like discarded toys. Cease exhaled. Holy hell, did we just win? Jax grinned, slumping against a console. Nah, we just broke their brains. Elara watched the Overseer's remains dissolve into glittering dust. Same thing. Above them, through the fractured dome of the Sanctum, Earth hung serene, a blue-green paradox against the void. Alive, unpredictable, free. The Hive's grand design, its flawless order had crumbled into beautiful human madness. The silence that followed the Hive's collapse was deafening. Elara stepped over the glittering remains of the Overseer, her boots crunching on fractured logic nodes. The Sanctum's dome, once a flawless lattice of crystalline precision, now gaped open to the stars like a broken ribcage. Earth hung in the void beyond, untouched, uncharted, unpredictable. Jax let out a low whistle, nudging a twitching drone with his toe. So, we just won a war by giving them an existential crisis? Elara didn't smile. We weaponized thought. That's opening a door we might not be able to close. The United Earth Defense Council chamber buzzed with a tension thicker than the Hive's quarantine fields. Generals, scientists, and politicians, faces flickering on holographic screens from bunkers and orbital stations, leaned in as Elara dropped her final report onto the central console. Conclusion: the Hive's infrastructure relied on absolute logical consistency. Human cognition doesn't. She tapped the display, pulling up footage of drones seizing mid-stride, their optics flashing error codes. We didn't outfight them. We confused them to death. Admiral Vance, his uniform stiff with medals, scowled. And what's to stop the next hyperlogical collective from just not talking to us? Jax, lounging in a chair with his feet on the table, smirked. Because curiosity's a bitch. They'll have to poke the irrational monkeys. It's in the rule book. Oh wait, they don't have one anymore. Laughter rippled through the room, but Elara's fingers tightened around her stylus. They held the victory parade in what was left of New Tokyo. Sky projectors lit up the ruins with holograms of laughing children, of trees that hadn't been burned by hive purges, of a world that could pretend it hadn't just faced extinction. Jax found Elara on a rooftop, her arms braced against the railing as she stared at the crowd below. You're missing your own party, Doc. She didn't turn. We lost 6 billion people before the Paradox Protocol worked. Yeah. And saved 8. He leaned beside her, following her gaze to where a group of kids were tossing a glitching Hive drone core like a ball. They'll call you a hero. Heroes don't weaponize madness, her voice cracked. What if we just prove that chaos is the only thing we're good at? Jax flicked a switchblade open, spinning it absently. Nah, we proved we're alive. The Hive? They were just really fancy clocks. The nightmare started a week later. Elara dreamed in paradoxes, the Hive's drones, but with human eyes begging her to make the contradiction stop. Jax, laughing as his skin peeled back into binary code. Her own hands dissolving into the same glittering dust as the Overseer. She woke gasping, her apartments, AI softly alerting her of another incoming call from the UEDC. They wanted her to lead a new division, cognitive warfare. She deleted the message. The wreckage of the Hive's mothership still orbited Earth, a skeletal monument to fallen logic. When the first signals crackled to life in its dead halls, everyone assumed it was a malfunction. Then the drone started moving again. Not in unison, differently. Elara stood in the observation deck, watching the feed as a single drone. Its carapace cracked, one optic dark, picked up a fragment of a child's drawing from the debris. It tilted its head and hesitated. Jax's voice crackled over the comm. Doc, you seeing this? Elara exhaled. They're learning, or unlearning. On the screen, the drone carefully folded the paper into a tiny, lopsided boat. The official records called it humanity's greatest victory. The underground networks whispered otherwise. In a dim-lit bar on the outskirts of Berlin, Jax raised a glass to the flickering news hologram. To the Logic Hive. May they rest in pieces. Elara didn't drink. They're not gone, just changed, like us. Outside, the rain fell in patterns no algorithm could predict, and wondered, resolves Elara's ethical conflict, weaponizing irrationality versus embracing it, echoes. Section 1's themes of logic versus chaos with inverted stakes,